Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to episode 44 of the Memorial Memo KSR's Kentucky Women's Basketball Podcast. We finally have a game to talk about that's already happened, another one to preview. We got a lot on the docket today. Got another sponsor, as you see right up. I'm bad at this, right up there. So we'll talk about them here in a little bit as well. But guys, I think to start this episode, I don't love starting the episodes with bad news or whatever, but as a Kentuckian, as someone who knows people, friends, family in Louisville, I have to kind of just briefly talk about yesterday and the plane crash and whatnot. Nick Roush literally lives. I don't know. I couldn't tell you his address or anything, but I know he lives pretty close to the airport and everything. Like I know he saw a lot of it. It just really sucks. I think Governor Beshear reported, I think the last number they said was like 9 people had passed away. That really sucks. So I just really quickly wanted to say my thoughts and prayers go out to everyone dealing with that situation out there in Louisville. But again, you're going to hear this a lot. There's not a great transition to basketball, but I do want to sort of at least let's turn this in the right direction. You tuned in here for Kentucky women's basketball, so let's talk about it, right? Number one, we're Kentucky, undefeated, 1-0, right? Kentucky defeats Morehead State 75-59. This was a really interesting game for me to watch because coming into it, I didn't know what all to expect, right? I figured Kentucky would win and it not be very close. But for the first 5 minutes of the game, Kentucky struggled. And not only did, we struggle, we were down. Like, I think it was maybe 13-4, something like that to start the game. Morehead with the lead. Like, to start that game, Kentucky, first of all, we couldn't hit shots. And we're really, something that concerns me a little bit on the defensive end of the floor. To me, it looked like, okay, our big lineup, which is, you have the triplets and then Jordan Obie's a bigger 2-guard. Like that lineup yesterday seemed to struggle guarding on the perimeter and specifically seemed to struggle with, okay, we're going to blow by your guys and go to the basket. I think in SEC play, they'll be more fine with that. I know post-game Kenny Brooks was talking about how we're not built to play Morehead State. And of course, when you hear that, you're like, that doesn't sound good. You know what I mean? You're not built to play Morehead State. But in the context that he's talking about, like they're such a smaller team than any of the SEC teams Kentucky, will face in conference play. It's just a matter of, okay, let's get there, let's just get to SEC play. And it's not like I'm saying that because non-conference isn't relevant or anything like that, because that's not true. When you get to the NCAA tournament, it's going to be non-conference, right? But it's just with these Morehead States of the world, it's just a little bit different. Just kind of looking at the stat sheet a little bit. First of all, what a Kentucky debut for Jordan Obie. Of course, she missed all of last season dealing with the dealing with the the lower leg injury. Suffered it in the offseason, couldn't play. Her first time being injured, so hungry to get on the floor, but couldn't. And then for her to come out against Morehead State and not only do well, but really dominate that game. We talked about Jordan being a bigger 2-guard. You really saw that. She was bullying people around. Like, she played with the level of physicality that I really want to see Clara Strack play with. You know what I mean? Like, when we go to play Texas or South Carolina or whoever, I want Clara Strack to play with that level of physicality because Jordan, and I thought it was great. Like, even in the beginning, Kenny Brooks was like he mentioned in the post game, he was like, I was not mad. I was not thrilled with Jordan because she wasn't rebounding all that much. And then, here she is. She has 15 rebounds, 15 points. Shot pretty efficiently from the field, 6 of 11. But again, to me, it was so great because of those 15 rebounds, 7 of them were on the offensive glass, right? It wasn't just like Morehead bricks a shot and she is in the right spot. Like, she was getting in position, fighting for rebounds. And again, I don't expect Jordan Obi to put up that kind of stat line every night. But when you get out there and, your shot isn't falling, that's what you do to kind of earn your keep. That's what you do to stay out on the floor. I thought a great example of that was Asia Boone last night. She only shot 2 of 11 from the field, 1 of 8 from 3, which, by the way, I'm not saying that's good. She's got to make more shots, right? She's got to go 3 of 8, 4 of 8, something like that. Like you can't afford for your sharpshooter to go 1 of 8. I don't expect that to continue. But like Asia Boone had the highest plus minus on the team. She had a 24 plus minus. And that's because when she's out there on the floor, she's doing the other things. She's playing hard on defense. She's moving, cutting, doing all these things on offense. If she isn't making shots, she's finding a way to kind of, again, earn her keep. She had 2 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 blocks. Little bitty Asia Boone with 2 blocks and 1 steal. She played more minutes than Tiani Key. Tiani Key played 18 minutes. She played 26, right? And speaking of Tiani, I'm pretty disappointed in her game 1. I think she'd be the first to say she's also disappointed in her game 1. But again, even outside of the scoring, she did some good stuff. 5 points, 1 of 7 from the field. Excuse me. I feel like to me, Tiani got some pretty good looks. They just weren't going in the hoop. And then 6 rebounds and led the team with 4 blocks. That should be fun to watch. But again, even after all of that, through everything, I still think Clara Strack was probably the best player on the floor. I know Jordan Obi was sort of the one that kind of caught your eye because of, I don't know if you expected her to do that, but Clara Strack also had 15 points and 15 rebounds. I think Corey Price put out a stat. They're the first duo to go 15 and 15 since, I believe, 2016. And then she had 2 dimes and then 3 blocks and 3 steals. So, the reigning SEC Defensive Player of the Year, making a very good start to her season on that end of the floor. This team, speaking of shot blocking, this team can be elite on that end of the floor. Again, Kentucky had, I'm going to try to pull it up. Let's see if I can find it. Total blocks. 12 total blocks. So that's a number that can definitely get it done. I believe Kentucky, well, I know for a fact they led the country last season in blocks per game. I think that number was 7 on the dot. So you start with 12 blocks against Morehead State. It's pretty good stuff right there. But again, just kind of going back to some of the bigger topics from the game. Actually, no, first I do want to talk about Toni Morgan because there is a very clear difference without Georgia Amoore at point guard. And I'm not saying that to say Toni Morgan sucks because she doesn't. But again, had some rough moments, but I thought overall I kind of liked what I saw from Toni Morgan. 16 points, 4 assists. I know she had 5 turnovers. You have to cut those down. But there's a pretty clear difference between Georgia and Toni at point guard. And I think my main point in saying that is just you can tell Kenny hasn't coached Toni for 5 years. You can tell Clara Strack, it's her first year playing with her. You can tell Amelia Hassett, Tiani Key, they have not played with Toni Morgan yet. Of course, you have the blue-white and the close scrimmage against Illinois, but this is their real first run. I saw a piece of dust fly next to me. I got to dust off this place apparently. But just looking at how the offense was being run last night, shot selection at times wasn't the best. Again, 4 assists from Toni Morgan. That's not a bad number, but that's a number you'd like to see go up. I know she averaged 5 per game last season. And I expect that to get better. It's game 1, and there is a lot of improvement to be had from now until March. So I think the offense will be where you see Kentucky really improve. I think on the defensive end of the floor, Kentucky kinda is just what they are. Again, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing with this group. It's just when you play the Morehead States of the world and you're, all these 5'5" guards running around amongst 6'5" giants, sometimes it'd be hard to defend on the perimeter. But again, no one and this is the Kenny Brooks defense where no one's going to drive in and score on this team a ton because you just have Tiani Key, Clara Strack, who are giants down there and can block any shot. Kentucky, they play like that on purpose. It's the whole style on defense, and it in turn makes her the best shot blocking team in the country. I think back to the offensive end of the floor, I think you can be concerned a little bit, or at least worried. I don't know what if you have a meter, let's say scale 1 to 10, because I don't have a meter graphic. Let's say a scale 1 to 10. How worried are you about this team's 3-point shooting? I know it's game one. I think it's fair to be at like a 2 or a 3, maybe even a 4 right now. Again, last game, or the only game, Morehead State, Kentucky shot 17% from 3, 4 of 24, and then 37% overall. But that 17% is the more terrifying number to me. There were concerns heading into the season about the starting lineup, not because they aren't good, but because you just don't have high-profile, elite three-point shooters in the starting lineup. You have Tony Morgan, who shot 23.5% at Georgia Tech. Jordan Obi, who shot like 38% at Penn, but okay, there's one person. And even then, she's not someone who I would sit there and call a sharpshooter by any means. Amelia Hassett had some good games last season, but overall, I think she was in the low 30s. And then Tiani Key and Claire Strack, I think they were in the 20s. You look at that starting five, and I do think that starting five is truly like the group that gives you, night in and night out, your best chance to win because of their experience and everything like that. But at the same time, I think it's going to be really important for Kenny to go out of his comfort zone a little bit and play a bit further into the rotation. You saw it a little bit with Asia Boone, and I hope that is a trend that continues. She was only 1 of 8 from 3, but I hope Asia Boone continues to get, high playing time like that. And of course, I'm not in and out of the practice gym every single day, so I couldn't tell you what exactly the deal is, but Josie Gilvin and Lexi Blue combined for 9 minutes. And on a team, you're missing Dom Perova to injury, who would have been one of those high-profile shooters, at least on paper. Like those two, like Josie Gilvin shot 41% from 3 last year. And I know Lexi Blue didn't have the most productive offensive year last year, but I've seen her shoot the ball. I just wonder if, on a night, let's say in the future, Kentucky is 4-24 from 3. Will Kenny Brooks, be more comfortable in going to the bench? Because this team is 9 players deep. This is a 9-player rotation. But if you just look at the box score from last night, it's really a 7-player rotation, right? Because I'm not sure if anyone that gets less than 10 minutes per game is a true, part of the rotation every single night out. Like if Lexi Blue and Josie Gilvin are getting 6 minutes against Morehead State, what are they going to get against LSU or South Carolina or Texas or Oklahoma, right? Are they even going to play? So to me, it's a matter of, will Kenny go outside of the 7? Will Kenny go outside of that? And can he, right? Can Lexi Blue and Josie Gilvin contribute? We'll have to see. It's way too early to call that right now. But it'll be something we have to kind of monitor throughout non-conference play, right? First of all, can the starters hit threes consistently? And if they aren't, will Kenny Brooks go deeper into the rotation, and hopefully the bench players can kind of sort of add some spark from beyond the arc. It's just one of those things, man. You saw last season, the bench just wasn't very good last season. And this year, the way the staff has talked about the bench, the way people have talked about the bench, to me, there's no reason why Kenny can't go 7 go maybe 8 or 9 deep. He just has to actually do it. And then, they have to be able to contribute, because again, if it's like last season, well, you can't stick in Josie and Lexi if they're not going to play well. And again, they only played 3 and 6 minutes last night, respectively. I can't sit here and say they were going to play bad or good, because I don't really know. We didn't really get enough of a sample size. So again, we just kind of have to keep that in mind moving forward. But 3-point shooting could be something that worries me about this team. It's a thought in the back of my head right now, but we'll just have to see. I want to give a quick shout out to Rollback. Change the game with Rollback, a proud partner of KSR. Get the best fit and the best feel with their incredibly comfortable activewear. From polos and quarter zips to shorts and Delta Performance pants, you will look good and feel good with Rollback. Use promo code KSR for 20% off your first purchase at rollback.com. Wanted to highlight this comment by Kenneth Burnett. It says Boone is more natural at point than Morgan. Morgan had a lot of players open for threes, but didn't pass to him, either forced a pass inside or went inside herself. Hopefully that will change tomorrow. It's an interesting thought because I think part of that's just kind of how Toni Morgan plays. Like, she is going to try to drive the ball herself because she's a very gifted driver to the hoop. I think she's better at that than even Georgia is. But it's just interesting. I think the offense is just trying to kind of figure itself out right now. Again, right? It's like I was saying earlier. This is Tony's first year in the Kenny Brooks system, whereas Georgia had 5 years. Georgia was pretty good as a freshman, but she wasn't what she was as a super senior, right? So obviously with Toni Morgan's experience in the ACC, hopefully that sort of acclimation process is sped up a lot this season. But again, it's just interesting to me to kind of see what the offense looks like under Toni Morgan, if it'll really start to really adapt as we go on. I think it's interesting you bring up Asia Boone being natural point guard because I think if you asked her, if you asked Kenny, if you asked a lot of people, I think they'd combat that. They would say Asia is definitely a better two guard. And I might be in that same boat, but I do think if the offense at times ever starts to really stall and it just looks like Toni Morgan, for whatever reason, is just having a problem running the point, then I think it's pretty fair to say, they've practiced it there in the offseason before Dom got hurt. Like, run Asia Boone at the one. See what you get. Moving on to Monmouth, who Kentucky plays tomorrow night, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on SEC Network Plus. If you can't attend, hopefully you can figure out the streaming information. It sounds like people started to figure it out on Monday, that is. But I thought it was funny. I got maybe 50 DMs, texts, KS board posts all combined. Everybody's like, Phoenix, there is a red screen. I can't see. What do I do? And so I'm sitting there on the sidelines trying to cover the game. And, of course, I'm thinking, well, crap. And so in the middle of me trying to cover this game and in the middle of the SEC network crew trying to broadcast, I just walk over to one of the not Noah Frary and Christy Thomas, not the people calling the game, but to the SEC network crew guys sitting next to him. I was like, hey, I've gotten a lot of texts saying there's a red screen, guys. I don't know what you do about that. And he looks at me like a deer in the headlights, and he's like, oh, okay. And of course, it comes back to me after a timeout, and he's like, oh, it was an ESPN issue. We're good. Sounds like they figured it out. But I just thought that was funny. Hopefully, you all are able to watch this Monmouth game, without too many issues. The thing with Monmouth, man, you just look at their roster, and they'll be really competitive in their conference, I think. This is kind of like Morehead State, where it's like, okay, hopefully Kentucky can go out here and just win this game and kind of move on, right? Last season, Monmouth went 16-15 overall, 10-8 in conference play. They opened their season with an 81-42 win over Chestnut Hill College. Now, if you all are like me, I have never, ever heard of Chestnut Hill College. And in fact, when you go to ESPN, they don't have a logo. They have the generic gray shield looking logo that ESPN uses for teams that aren't D1. So I don't know if that school can't be D1, right? I guess they are, but Chestnut Hill College, I don't know. Where is that at? Chestnut Hill, I guess. I don't know. But again, Monmouth started their season, the big win there. And something I do think is interesting to monitor and kind of think about for tomorrow's game. in the entirety of Division One, not just conference play or whatever, Monmouth was top 50, which is a pretty good group, right? Like there's 350 teams. They're in the top 50 and field goal percentage defense last season. They are number 49, held their opponents, to 38% from the field. So if Kentucky can't figure out, the three-point shot, if they shoot 37% from the field again, I mean, this Monmouth team is, last season they were really solid defensively. Might be scared a little bit. Might be thinking about like, Monmouth not an upset, but this game's going to be a little bit more close than we want it to be if Kentucky can't hit shots. Just going to kind of look at sort of Monmouth's key players to kind of look at, who do we need to keep an eye on? And again, you see the stats on the screen or the stats I'm about to talk about. This is all based on one game, right? And this is all I really have to go off of. So first of all, forgive me. But secondly, this is who played well in their season opener, and these are who we need to keep an eye on. So we start with their top performer, Alexis Davis, who, there is their staple down in the paint. 20 points per game. And again, this is all based on one game against Chestnut Hill College. But 20 points per game, 14 rebounds per game, 2 blocks per game. So that'll be interesting to kind of keep an eye on as, she performed really well in that game. But can she kind of keep it up against Kentucky? She's only 6 foot tall. Probably would have been more useful to put heights and measurements in here rather than single game stats. But regardless, Devon Dibula, who put up 12 points, 6 rebounds, and 3 steals. This is a team that can get out and defend the perimeter really well. Talked about Kentucky not being able to do that as well. They can certainly do it. Kellen Priera, 12 points per game, 3 steals per game. And then she shot 37.5% from 3 in the season opener. Again, Kentucky's going to have to defend the perimeter really well. I think not to say this game can be won from the arc because, Kentucky's just so much more talented. They should win, kind of regardless. But it can get close if, Kentucky can't really control the game, offensively and defensively from three-point range. And then, of course, Kathy Kersaint, 6 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists per game. Again, Monmouth is, like Morehead State, much smaller. They're not going to kill you with their size and talent. But at the same time, they can get you with the speed and quickness that Morehead State kind of got Kentucky with. Just kind of guessing, I would say this team is probably better than Morehead State. Again, not a ton to go off of there. This is definitely a bigger team than Morehead State. You have 3 players, if I can count right, that are at least 6 foot tall, and you have several more girls at 5'11", 5'10". Of course, their tallest player being Ella Fairley, who had 4 points and 10 rebounds in that game. She is 6'3", so she'll be the one matched up on Claire Strachan low, obviously. Like, Monmouth has decent size for a non-conference school, for a mid-major like that. Again, this should just be a game that Kentucky's kind of able to control, the pace of play. That's one thing I want to see. Morehead did a really good job, and this is a credit to Ashton Feldhaus, and I think they'll be a really solid team this year, actually. And if not this year, at least moving forward. Morehead State did a really, really good job, I think, of controlling the pace of play. You kind of noticed, later in the fourth quarter, we were fatigued, we were done. The defense got real sloppy. You thought it was bad to start the game. Buddy, go look at the tape from the last 5 minutes or so of the game. You had players if someone cuts to the basket, it's I'm too tired to go over there and guard. It was kind of shocking almost to see Morehead State out-conditioned Kentucky, in that game. It was interesting to watch, and I think in the post-game presser, someone asked Jordan Obie about it, because, from her performance, she was up there with Kenny. And, they're like, so were you all fatigued at the end? And she was like, no. And then Kenny just looks at it. He's like, well, be honest, right? And then she's kind of just like, yeah. I guess, it's one of those things to me where, like, I don't know how that happens, to be honest. Like, I don't know how Morehead. Again, credit to Ashton Feldhouse. I just don't know how you kind of let that slip away if you're Kentucky. Like, you, I guess, especially in these games, you need to be able to establish the pace of play, because if you can't do that against Tennessee, you're going to get run out of the building. I mean, Tennessee, their whole scheme relies on pace of play. If you can't control the pace of play against a Morehead State or a Monmouth, I feel sorry whenever you play Tennessee, because Ken Caldwell will run your girls out of the building. So I think that's something to keep an eye on. But despite all of that, despite all of those things, I think Kentucky is much more talented, probably better coached if I had to guess. I think Kentucky, they're going to win this game. First of all, the shooting, I want to see it get better. I want to see, can you make, instead of 17% of your threes, maybe, can you make sort of, let's see, let's throw a number out there, 35% of your threes, right? Can you do that much? And then defensively, just kind of want to see Kentucky keep up with their guards a little bit. I think they'll do a better job of that. I think we'll see a lot of improvement from game 1 to game 2. And of course, game 2, game 3 to game 4, so on. But there's just some small things that I want to see Kentucky do really well in this game. And I think they will, which is why I forgot to do this last episode. I'm going to try to do a prediction and game MVP for these games. My prediction for Kentucky versus Monmouth, I have the Cats winning 79-52. I'll remember to make a graphic next time, so that way you're not just staring at Monmouth preview. I have Kentucky winning 79-52. And then Tony Morgan, I think, will be the MVP of the game. I think she sort of kind of starts to figure it out a little bit offensively. I think, she gets close to a double-double. I think she has maybe, let's say, 16 points, 8 assists against Monmouth. I think she kind of starts to figure it out. I think Kentucky starts to shoot the 3 much better. And, some of the woes we saw against Morehead State, I don't think those are going to totally, be a forever thing for this team. Kentucky, I don't think they're where they want to be. I mean, they're definitely not. And I think they start to kind of make that improvement starting on tomorrow. I was going to say starting on Thursday, but just starting tomorrow, right? Because it's Wednesday. We're going to do a quick segment real quick before we get out of here, where shout out to BetMGM, who is hopping in with us this season. If you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, guys, okay, you see it below. First of all, use our bonus code on3, and you get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. $1,500 first bet offer. Here's how it goes. You're going to download the BetMGM app, sign up using the on3 bonus code. You're going to deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game. Doesn't matter what game, any game. And then you receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets if your bet loses. Just make sure you use the bonus code on3 when you sign up. Make this college basketball season a legendary one. Make it one for the history books. I'm going to do a pick segment right here, as you see on the screen. Actually, when I originally did this graphic, when I cooked this up originally, Kentucky, not Kentucky, the Tania Latson bet that you see, that doubled. Like, she was plus 550 to win the Wooden Award, and now she's plus 1,000. So I'm starting with, this is a futures. Here's my futures picks, betting wise. I think UConn repeats as national champions. I think UConn is just so talented. I mean, I know you lose Paige Beckers, but you have AZ Fudd, Sarah Strong, Sarah Williams. I mean, Gino's still the head coach there. Like, UConn, and the way they played Louisville last night, where Louisville got down 28 points in that game. That's a top 20 Louisville team. And that game was on a neutral court. It wasn't in stores or anything. It was on a neutral court. UConn got up 28 points, and I think they only won by like 13 or so. I actually think Louisville, for the most part, played really well in that game. Again, I know you got down big, but I mean, the comeback, I don't like to say this because I don't love Louisville at all, but that's really encouraging, I think, if you're a Louisville fan. But UConn is just so good, just so damn good. They're my pick to win the national title. I know it's the shortest odds. It's like the easiest pick, but if you're going to put your money on it, I think you pick UConn to win the title. Now, this is an interesting one to me because I have Tanaya Latson winning the Wooden Award. Now, last season, she was at Florida State. She is now at South Carolina. At Florida State, she led the country in points per game. I believe it was 25.2 points per game. She was by far the best scorer in the country. I mean, not by far, but she was the best scorer in the country. With Chloe Kitts going down to South Carolina, with the team that's constructed there, I mean, first of all, Tanaya was their big portal get, right? She was the best player in the portal. They went and got her. I think with Chloe Kitts going down, and again, just the way that team is kind of built around Tanaya, I think she's going to be, the best player on a top 3 team in the country. And, I think when you look at UConn, because Sarah Strong, AZ Fudd, they're up there for discussion for the Wooden Award. But to me, and you kind of see this a lot with UConn, last season, AZ Fudd only averaged, I think, 13 points a game because of just how stacked the whole roster is. And you see that a lot with South Carolina too, actually. But again, I just think when you look at the Gamecocks, I think she's going to be able to put up 20, 25 points per game again, and I think she wins the Wooden Award. And then these right here are what I call my good value dark horses, right? I didn't have any clever name for them, so I just call them that. These are my bets when, I'm looking through BetMGM and I'm scrolling at the futures. I'm like, who do I want to bet on? Or who could I bet on? Who's a sneaky pick here? Who is someone that people aren't looking out for necessarily? Who can I bet on for good value? First of all, I love this. I love the value here on this Texas pick. Texas to win the national championship at plus 1,100. I mean, first of all, plus 1,100 on a bet like that, that's really good. But Texas, man. So first of all, Vic Schaefer, championship coach at Mississippi State, comes to Texas. Texas brings back the SEC Player of the Year and Madison Booker. Bring back Rory Harmon, Oldacre. They bring in some talented transfers that I cannot think of off the top of my head. But Texas, and you see this a lot in men's basketball, they got to a Final Four last season. Texas has been knocking on the door. Under Vic Schaefer, Texas has been knocking on the door of getting to a national championship. They beat South Carolina last season. And then, of course, South Carolina beat them in the SEC championship game and whatnot. And, again, Texas made that run to the Final Four. I don't think there's any reason why they can't do that again. And, of course, once you get to the Final Four, and I've said it on here a lot about Kentucky, when you get that far, it's a bounce of the ball or, one whistle and you're a national champion or whatnot. So I think Texas at plus 1,100 to win the national championship, I really, really like those odds. And then Michaela Blake's to win the Wooden Award at plus 1,600. Now, the value on that doesn't look as good because, again, when I originally cooked up this graphic and these picks, Tanaya Latson was only plus 550 instead of plus 1,000 to win the Wooden Award. But Michaela Blake's last season, of course, she's at Vandy. And first of all, Vandy loses Camille Pierre to NC State, who averaged 20 points per game for them. Now, I don't want to say she's on an island, but she is the star at Vanderbilt. There is no other 20-point per game scorer. It's just Michaela Blake's. And last season she averaged, I think it was 23 points per game. Of course, last season she had some of those games where she scored 50, 55, maybe even 60 points in a game last year, right? Just point being, uber talented scorer, uber talented player. She was only a freshman last season. So when I sit and think about who can be a dark horse, quote unquote, for the Wooden Award, I think of Michaela Blake's because of the things I just said, right? And I think the only thing because I wouldn't be surprised if she leads the country in scoring. I wouldn't be surprised if she averages damn near 30 points a game. But the thing that to me makes it sort of I don't know, is how good is Vandy going to be? You know, how good is Vandy going to be outside of tonight, or excuse me, out of Michaela Blake's? They had a really good outing against Cal to open their season. Of course, California, power conference school in the ACC. But again, I'm just I continue to remain a little bit skeptical about okay, how good is Vanderbilt? But of course, if Michaela Blake is averaging 30 points per game and Vandy ends up, in the top half of the SEC at least, then I think it's pretty fair to say like she can be your Wooden Award winner. So again, sitting there at plus 1,600, I really like her. So again, just to briefly go over my picks for my futures picks of the season for women's college basketball, I have UConn to repeat as national champions. South Carolina's Tania Letson to win the Wooden Award. And then again, my good value dark horse picks, Texas to win the national title at plus 1,100. And then Michaela Blake's to win the Wooden Award at plus 1,600. So that's where we're going to call it for this episode. Again, Kentucky, you saw them struggle a little bit against Morehead State. And you could see a world where they might struggle again a little bit against Monmouth. I think Kentucky kind of starts to figure it out a little bit. You get one game under your belt. Okay, what do we need to do in order to be better? I think Kentucky starts to take a step in the right direction there. And again, I have the Cats winning that one 79-52. Tony Morgan, your game MVP, should be the one who we talk about tomorrow night and the rapid reaction and the post-game content. I think Tony Morgan is going to have a really big game tomorrow night. So with that, we're going to get out of here. Of course, I'm Phoenix Stevens. Subscribe to the KSR YouTube channel, right? We're at 52 point. I believe it's 52.4K as of me saying this. I know I have 52.3 in the graphic, but I believe we have another 100. So shout out to Steven for keeping the YouTube growing. Again, if you're watching this right now, like the video, hit that thumbs up. I want to see that number go way high. Thank you all again so much for watching. Like these last few episodes have been tremendous. I sit here and wonder every day, like, what can I do to make this thing better? And I don't know if I'm doing something right or if you all are just really invested right now, because ever since the Fan Fest, that was 7,000 views. I think every episode since then is, except for maybe one, have eclipsed 3,000 views. And, for this podcast where we started, where you get a couple hundred people watching, right? And we're only in episode 43 and we've grown our viewership tenfold. I mean, it's just tremendous. And I can't thank you all enough for tuning in. I know comment section not as active today, but I remember last week I had people talking about from Florida, from, wherever, from overseas. And it's just so special to me that you all are still tuning in and listening to whatever in the hell I have to say week in and week out, whether it makes sense or not make sense. But again, just thank you all so much for tuning in. Thank you all for staying here. Let's all have a good season. Like we're 1-0. I thought about this. This is almost what I called the episode. Of course, if you look up the titles, it wasn't pretty, but the Cats are 1-0. I almost called it 1-0 and not done yet. Like whenever the men's team's 31-0 and not done yet, but I was like, that sounds stupid because 1-0. But Kentucky, we are 1-0, and we are not done yet, right? Like we're gonna go 2-0 against Monmouth, 3-0, 4-0, and then let's just have a good season. That's my point. Again, thank you all so much for tuning in. So much, so much gratitude from me because of you all, right? I'm not doing this. There's no podcast. There's nothing without you all. So again, thank you all so much. I think I've said that 2-word phrase 100 times in the last 5 minutes, or at least the last 2 minutes. So we're going to go ahead and get on here. This has been episode 44 of the Memo. Looking at 45 whenever we come back. My main association with that number is whenever Michael Jordan came back, he was number 45. Forget the reason for that. Remember he had a reason for being 45. I don't know. I'm talking about Michael Jordan's number, so I'm going to get out of here. Again, thank you all so much. This has been episode 44 of the Memorial Memo. Like, comment, subscribe. We will see you guys after we beat Monmouth. Go Cats.